Good evening. This is Tanya Jackson, and I am the creator of Nonprofits Get Connected. And I have over 15 years working in the nonprofit sector. And I started working, I have three daughters, seven grandchildren. I started working in the nonprofit sector exactly 1 week after I had buried my husband, which led me to he had sickle cell disease, so it led me to help others. And so I did a lot of volunteering. I've worked over the last 15 years, I've worked with several nonprofit organizations. I've managed their back offices, and I've, created procedures for them. I've worked with an organization that had a database over 300,000 constituents, 41,000 donors, and I've worked with organizations as small as 5,000 constituents and 2,000 donors. So I've had a wide range. I've trained corporate offices. I've managed a staff of six donor coordinators. So I've had some extensive experience in working with the back office. And so what I saw over the last 15 years is kind of like the same um, thing that was going on with most back offices, and in terms of administrative and support and staff changes and things like that, and just trying to maintain a strong back office. And one of the things I would always say to, the directors or vice presidents is that, all the work that you do, all, going out, talking to people, getting people to give donations to you, giving, the front end looks great. But if your back end is not working, and it's not thanking donors, and it's not cultivating those relationships, helping to cultivate those relationships with the back end information, or things like that, then you get a lot of one-time donors, because it's only right for you to thank your donors and thank them timely, in a timely manner. So the reason I'm doing this is because, and the reason why I came up with Nonprofits Get Connected, is because seeing that there was a need for this. There are 1.1 million nonprofit organizations in the United States, and every day the IRS is approving more hundreds of 501c3. And what's happening is a lot of organizations that are getting their 501c3s, they're passionate about what their mission, and they're passionate about what they're doing, and they want to hit the ground running because now they've got that documentation. But what happens is they fail to plan for the back end. And so then they begin to struggle with that. And things, come up, and then they have a lot of questions because they didn't do the homework on the front end, just as they were passionate about their mission, being passionate about making it work on the back end. And that includes financial reporting, it includes acknowledgement letters, tax receipts, thank yous. What's the difference? So, the month of September, I'm going to be going through basically choosing your donor management software. And why that's important is because a lot of organizations will operate, small nonprofit organizations will operate off of Excel spreadsheets. But what happens when you get to a point where that spreadsheet gets so big, you can only do so much with it, in terms of, you've got 50 columns now, and you're trying to sort it all, and you're trying to make it make sense. Eventually, you're going to have to convert to a donor management software. So, what is back office operations? So, back office operations are the part of a nonprofit or any organization where you it's not where there's non-client functions. So that means that these are the people that are making things happen behind the scenes. And there's very little face to face with the client or the donor or the constituent. So some of the obvious examples of back office operations is like the IT operations, human resource, and marketing. But what I'm going to be focusing on is the administrative piece in terms of making your organization run smooth and look good, and donors are happy, and it's all part of the cultivation. So one of the things that you want to do is practice sensitivity, and the impacts of COVID-19 means that you've got to work a little bit harder to do that with your donors or your constituents, because now there's very little face to face. And so basically, they're going to be looking at what you're doing in your emails, what you're doing in sending them letters or phone calls, because there's very little face to face. A lot of organizations now are doing virtual events. And those virtual events, you've got to, now it's basically like a TV show. So you've got to present a TV show to your, past event goers. And so it's difficult. It's a little bit more difficult, but once you get into doing it, it becomes a little bit more easy for you. So the 4 core areas that I'm going to be talking about in the next few months. So if I've got every Tuesday, I'll be doing this every Tuesday. And I think I've got everything planned out. I think I've got something planned out for every Tuesday through the end of December. And so this, for September, we're going to be talking about donor management software. And that's going to include, and then we're going to be talking about tax receipts, acknowledgement, and thank yous. And then we're going to be talking about building and maintaining your donor list, which is really important because there's segmentations that you need to do, and because you can't talk to every donor the exact same way. Then we're going to be talking about donor summaries and year-end reports and why those are important and how to pull those together. So today's topic is on 3 steps you must do before choosing a donor management software. And a lot of times when this is done, when you're thinking about a donor management software, so they have software from large organizations down to very small organizations. Even now, a lot of donor management software are offering for you to pay monthly. And there's a risk in that. And I'm going to get to that later on, but I'm just going to mention it right now. The risk in that is who owns your data. You got to ask yourself the question when you're doing a month to month. If you're on a 1-year contract, you pretty much know the terms of that contract. But when you're on a month to month paying for a donor management software, you got a month to month contract. So what happens after that, after day 31, you decide that I'm not going to keep this software. What happens to your data? So those are questions that you have to ask yourself. One of the things is, one of the steps is to make a scorecard. And what I mean by scorecard is you're going to make a list of your desired features. So you've got to determine what are the features I need in order to have a smooth running donor database and, be able to keep track of my donations and keep track of my donors and email addresses and phone numbers and where they went to school and things like this. So there's a long list of data that you need to keep. And the more data you have, the better you can communicate with that donor or constituent. So I will actually, I'm creating an ebook And in this ebook, it does give you details on top features that you may want. It's maybe 16 features that you would want in your donor software. So I'm creating that, and it should be completed by the end of this month when we're talking about donor management software. The other thing is, and a few of the things that you do want, I'll just name a couple. Email solicitation, general thank you letters to generate those thank you letters, and then you want automation, because if you got to do everything manually, that takes a lot of time, and you want to be able to automate a lot of services that you're offering and that your donor database is offering. Step 2 is you set up demos or free trials. That is very important in the beginning because it gives you the opportunity to test and see what options or features that a database may have. So you may want to do some free trials. And some companies, they used to offer 30 days. A lot of them are offering 14 days now. And you could very well go back to that company and ask, could they, 14 days is not a lot of time to if you're going to be spending money with them, it's not a lot of time to review a donor database. So you can ask them for more time, or you can ask for a rep to work with you. One of the things that I know that a lot of the companies that are doing the month to month want you to put a credit card up. Try not to do that, because if you're dealing with 3 or 4 of them, you may forget to go and cancel that that credit card after your trial period, and then now you're charged, and then you got to try and go back to them and get your money back. So try to do it with ones that don't have a credit card. Most of the reputable companies don't ask you for a credit card up front. They give you just the regular trial period. You can ask for a rep to actually come out and show you the software, but now that we're in COVID, you can very easily do a demo online, or you can very easily do a demo Zoom, or be on the phone with them while you're looking in the software. And that's when you can, look in and you can ask a lot of questions. The other, number 3, is you want to make a list of your questions. And in the ebook, I do give you, I think maybe 10 questions that you are going to want to ask when you're talking to them, and this is even before you even get close to making a decision. Like when I just said before, one of the important questions is, do I own my data? Who owns my data? Because, if you shut that database down and they own your data, you've lost all your data. So you need to make sure. So I do give you top 10 or top 10 questions to ask when you're reviewing databases. And when you're doing a comparison, you'll be able to see, if you do those comparisons side by side, you'll be able to see what one is offering and the other one isn't, and what's important to you. So if you're looking across those, 3 or 4 side by side, and you want to put them side by side, it'll be very easy for you to see what one has for you, what one has that the other, and then what are you willing to not have in order to get good pricing, cost, or service. You want to make sure that they've got maintenance. And I want to tell you, a story, which is why this story is what it caught my attention, because I was working for a foundation, and A lot of times when you're in the nonprofit sector, or if you're a small nonprofit, large nonprofit, a lot of times companies don't want to. They have a dollar amount that they will send out thank yous to, or add to the email list, or add to invitations to invite them to things. And so there was this lady. She was an elderly lady, and she would send in $5 a year. And every year, faithfully, the same time of the month, this $5 would come with a little note that she had written, and basically saying, I don't have, I'm on a fixed income. I love your programs. I want to be, you know, and I want to stay connected. I'm very fond of what you do. And so the decision had been made by the vice president of fund development that donors who gave under, I think it was under $100 or something like that, 200. Now, with a tax receipt, you have to, any donor that gives over $250, you have to give them a tax receipt. Well, they had made the decision, okay, anybody that has given less than $100 won't get a letter, and they won't get an email or anything like that. So this was probably about 8 or 9 years ago. And so I took it up by myself to make the decision for the department to go ahead and send this particular lady a thank you letter, for her $5. And I know, the paper, you talk about the cost of sending a letter. You got to think about the cost of the envelope, the paper, the stamp, the time that it takes for your staff to create the letter. And so, when you think about your return on investment, she's pretty much paying for, for us to send her a letter. So I took it upon myself to send her every time she sent the $5, I took it upon myself to send her that letter, regardless of the decision that had been made. So one year, instead of me getting a donation from her, I received a letter from her attorney. And in the letter from her attorney was, it was part of her will. And she had written our organization into her will. And the will stated that she was giving our organization $300,000 out of her will, out of her estate. Now, the moral of that story is every donor that you get, every dollar that you get from someone is their hard-earned money that they've decided to just give to you. And you got to think about that, because had I not sent these thank you letters to this donor, then we wouldn't have gotten that $300,000. And not that that was what we were expecting from her, but you think about, how hard is it to say thank you to a donor, and then for them to bless your organization with that amount of money. Now, the key is that the reason she always said that she was on a fixed income, because she was, but she was living based on the paperwork. She was living off the interest of that $300,000. So that's why she was on a fixed income, because that $300,000 was sitting in some type of mutual fund or something like that. And she was basically living off the interest. So once she passed away, I believe that she didn't have any family. So once she passed away, she gave that $300,000 to our organization. So, it's, you got to think about that. And this whole process is, a lot of behind the scenes, some of the things you might feel that, are taking a lot of time for you to do, or it's not necessary, but you got to think twice because you don't know the situation of your constituent. You don't know what their financial situation is. You don't know what their passion is. And the reason why they're giving to you is because they're passionate about the work that you do. And people, everybody's not going to start a nonprofit organization. Everybody's not going to create what we're creating in the nonprofit sector. So they live vicariously through the work that you're doing. So they will give and you say thank you, and they will give again and you say thank you, and they will continue to give. And then they'll ask their friends to give. And then they'll go plan an event around your organization and get everybody to give. So it goes on and on and on. So I said that to say, this part of having a nonprofit, and I have a nonprofit, and this part of having a nonprofit is something that is kind of overlooked, and even in larger organizations, not understanding that this piece of it is really your meat and potatoes. You can go and sit and talk all day to someone and get their check, get them to write a check and get them to donate and get them to talk to people for you. You can go and do that and be successful at it. But at that very moment that you forget to thank that donor, at that very moment that you forget to recognize what they've done for your organization, it is at that moment that they can walk away and not support you again. So it's important. So the rest of September, so every Tuesday at 7 p.m., I'll be going live to discuss a different topic. And I'm hoping that this will help somebody that may be struggling. If you have questions, you can email me at nonprofitsgetconnected@gmail.com. And I will respond to your question or your comment or anything like that. And so September 15th, I'm going to be discussing the top requested features that you should be looking for in your donor management software. September 22nd, I'm going to be talking about the questions to ask when you're inquiring about your software. September 29th, I'm going to be talking about integration, and this is going to be posted on the page so that you can keep up with it, and I'll create events so that it's a reminder. September 29th, I'll be talking about integration. Integration is a really important thing because a lot of software reps or people who sell software will tell you, yeah, it will integrate with your program or whatever you're doing. Or say you already have a software and you want to choose another software. They will tell you, yeah, sure, it integrates, into your software. Integration means it works within your software. A lot of people, when they say integration, they mean, well, yeah, you can export an Excel spreadsheet out of our software and then you can just import it into yours. That's not integration. So I will be talking about that. I'll also be talking about how to secure your data and then who owns your data. So I'll be talking about that September 29th. And if you have questions, and also I want to give you the topics for, I already have the topics for September. Hold on, let me pull this up. For October, November, and December. And so in the month of October, we'll be talking about tax receipts, acknowledgement, and thank yous, and what the difference is. Also, on the tax receipts, there's a tax statement, an IRS tax statement. I'll be talking about that and when to use which IRS tax statement, because when you give a donor a tax receipt and they have to file it with their taxes, if that IRS tax statement is not on there, it's not considered a donation. So it's important that that tax statement is on the bottom of your IRS letter. So I'll be giving you those tax statements that goes on the bottom of the letter, and when and how to use those statements. For November, we'll be talking about building and maintaining your prospect list. And that is when I was talking about when you have donors, and you have donors that give at different levels, you have donors that give to particular things, you have to segment those donors in order to speak to them correctly. You can't speak to $1,000. Let me say this, and I'm going to repeat this again when I talk about this. If you talk to a donor that's capable of giving you $10,000, and if you talk to them and say, thank you for your $5 that you gave such and such, that donor is probably going to walk away. You have to talk to them at their level. So that's what I mean when you're segmenting your list. So I'm going to give you some different segments that you can use when you're talking to different donors, because each segment requires a different type of letter when you're sending, or a different type of email. The language in the email when you're targeting a $10,000 donor is going to be different than when you're targeting a $5 donor. So we'll talk about that in November. And then in December, which is a perfect month to discuss this, is about donor summaries and year-end statements, because it'll be time for that and why that's important. So I'm not going to keep you guys. And I will, once I'm ready to post the ebook, I'll post it on the page. And once again, if you want to email me or ask me questions, you can actually put it in this post, or you can email me at nonprofitsgetconnected@gmail.com. And that's it for today. And I hope to see you next Tuesday. So have a great day. And I've got a shawl on because we went from 90 something degrees to 50. And so it's a little bit chilly. So stay warm and stay safe, and wear those masks. I'll talk to you soon.